Chapter 411 Proposal. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. As for the method to seal the gods, I know everything about it since I'm the one who perfected it, said Arundel as he boasted about his achievements. The clone who was silently listening to Arundel's story up to this point understood a lot about this man's character as he both sympathized and disapproved of his choices. What he made from Arundel's story was that without the protection of the Codex which made this hidden city a safe haven for the abyssal mages, they staged a walkout and decided to move to other hidden safe havens to experiment, leaving Zagoroth and his disciples to their own devices. Zagoroth being connected to the Codex put so much strain on the divine object that to keep him alive, it could almost no longer support anyone else. However, due to Zagoroth's contamination, by the time the disciples decided to seal him and leave the city, it was already too late for them as their bodies had also absorbed too much of the death-corrosive aura and without the Codex to keep them alive, preventing them from venturing into the free world. To keep his younger brothers from going insane, Arundel connected them to some weird imaginary world in what was potentially the universe's first VR helmet. The blob of mass and the weird roots that he saw emerging from the brains of the 4 individuals downstairs was probably a result of that. In the end, Arundel, who had the choice of joining them, instead chose to put himself to sleep, and only wake up the day someone came into his tower. While the clone could sympathize with Arundel's pitiful situation to be alive and in hibernation for over 4,200 years, alone, waiting for someone to visit one day, he also did feel that his current situation was a direct consequence of his choices made in the past. The method to seal the gods, it's a technique that you will be able to use as a tier 6 god, an invaluable spell that can restrict even tier 8 gods. And I'll give it to you. But the knowledge of that move is not something that can be given for free. According to the law of equal exchange, if you want that knowledge you must complete a quest for me first. What do you say, adventurer? How badly do you wish to obtain that information? Arundel asked the clone with a crazed expression on his face as the clone realized that this bastard had also lost his lucidity long ago. Meanwhile Max was worried about the clone as, depending on the corruption by the death aura, he should have long returned by now. He was inside the mage tower for over 18 minutes now, and it seemed like he might have been unable to escape and died inside, since there was no way one could survive inside for more than that. Damn it! Max cursed as grinded his teeth. He really wanted to obtain the clues regarding his brother's death, but he would now need to wait another 48 hours before his perfect cloning skills cooldown period ended and he could summon his clone again. With the 30 minutes since the wind elemental's death being over, the bastard resurrected again and engaged in combat with Max for round 2 as Max let out all his frustrations on losing his clone upon the wind spirit. This time Sebastian also joined him in battle rather than watching from the sidelines, and after an intense battle that lasted 20 minutes the duo did suppress the wind elemental and send it to resurrect for 30 more minutes. Meanwhile Regis hummed deeply as he read a report on the activities of his youngest son Lucius. Both his children Felix and Lucius were at an age where they thought they had become smarter than their father and could hide things from him effectively. However, they were both gravely mistaken, as every confidant the two had and every step they took were all controlled by Regis from the shadows. Regis only turned blind eye to his son's activities and pretended to not know because he understood that he could only ever confront them about it once. Once he used the opportunity to confront them, they would understand that their networks were all compromised and that every action they took was being monitored. Under such circumstances they would create new networks and become more secretive in their approach, making it difficult for Regis to track them. Not wanting to waste that one opportunity on meaningless confrontations, Regis patiently bided his time and allowed them to live freely. This time his youngest son was seemingly trying to rope in Raven to his faction while also exploring some ancient ruins alongside him. It was not a bad thing, especially because the experience would allow him to grow, whereas roping Raven into his faction would help him strengthen his political hold over the lower clans. As a father, Regis was happy to see Lucius's calculated approach, but was also concerned that the ancient ruins he was exploring might be dangerous and lead to his death. Except for that one concern, the situation was extremely favorable for Regis. If the exploration succeeded and Raven did not report his findings to him, he could use it as material for blackmail and hold him accountable. If the exploration was successful and Raven did end up reporting his findings, then his son would need to report his involvement in the matter too, and it would be a win for him as a father. If the exploration was unsuccessful and they found nothing, it would be a lesson for Lucius to learn from and mature. If the exploration was unsuccessful and Lucius was injured or died, Regis would be heartbroken, but it could be used as excuse to execute Raven. Either way, in the end it was a win for the monarch. /////////N. Chapter 1220, End of Day 3. This bonus chapter is sponsored by patron Alcat_Gaming. Please thank him in the comments for this one //////. Chapter 412 Quest. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What quest must I do for you? The clone asked Arendelle with a straight face, as it hoped that it could be a doable request. Haha. Here, Arendelle said with a chuckle as he snapped his fingers. Codex quest. Kill the weakened abyssal mage Zagarath and free the codex of his corruption. Participants limit. None. Adventurers are free to add as many participants as required for this mission. Time limit. None. Quest reward. Knowledge of the sealing method. Do you wish to accept? Yes. The clone read the quest and looked at Arendelle with a smug face. The semi-crazy bastard must have some big secret as to why he chose to seal Zagarath in the basement and did not kill him outright. This quest was by no means simple. If you are so powerful yourself, Arendelle, why do you need me to do this for you? Why can't you kill him yourself? I'm only a tier 4 adventurer after all, the clone asked with suspicion as Arendelle's golden eyes suddenly turned into deep black as he stared maliciously at the clone. The clone could feel Arendelle's murderous intent seep out as he witnessed his crazed state in full glory. However, Arendelle never attacked as he barely restrained his urges. Master can control us with an imprint he has left on our bodies. Us disciples cannot fight him, only you outsiders can. I will give you a ring that will help you resist his contaminating aura for 30 minutes, but that's the maximum that I can do, Arendelle replied to the clone as the clone closed his eyes and contemplated for a bit. When he opened his eyes, he let out a deep sigh as he clicked yes, and accepted the quest. Arendelle beamed at this outcome as he tossed the clone a ring. Runic Protection Ring. A one-time use item that can help you resist the corruption of death aura for 30 minutes. There is only one entrance to the basement levels underneath, and it's through the master's personal residence. It should be a building with a conical top right underneath the biggest bioluminescent light source in the city, Arendelle said as he snapped his fingers once again and ejected the clone outside the mage tower onto the street below. Cervantes's POV, it has begun. The Emperor asked aloofly as he flung the report in his hands aside. Father, the Night King has begun decoupling his territory's trade with the other light faction monarchies. He has amped up production of raw materials and launched a military recruitment drive. From the pace at which he is doing things, the timeline seems to be 2.3 years before he can arm himself to the teeth and confidently declare his rebellion, Prince Amon said as he reported to his father. How are you handling this? Cervantes asked his son with anticipation as he expected him to take ideal measures as the future ruler of this monarchy. I'm interfering with his purchase orders, heckling his merchant groups, infiltrating his mass army recruitment campaign with spies and simultaneously building up an information network within his territory. Even if a war breaks out with him against us, I will make sure that it will be as late as possible and we won't be taken by surprise when that day eventually comes, Amon replied as Cervantes nodded with pride. He had taught his son well, and with the next great war looming over their heads, Cervantes was happy that some of the state burdens could be handled by his son. What about Avens, Omar and Regis? Have they picked a side yet? Cervantes asked as Amon closed his eyes in helplessness. They are money grubbers' fathers, all three of them. They want to play the role of the pimp in this war and sell weapons to both sides and make a profit. Avon seems to have made some secret deal with Lucifer, while Regis only cares about the welfare of the vampire state and does not care about external matters. Both of them think that they can weather the upcoming war neutrally, but Regis is definitely building strength silently. He does intend to join if the conditions are favorable or the war comes to his footsteps. Amon reported as Cervantes clicked his tongue. Cervantes long knew that the only allies he truly had were the true elite's kingdom and the one-night monarchy, but he expected the other light faction rulers to at least resist the dark faction forces if need be. But apparently the money-grubbing bastards had no intentions of putting themselves in the war path. If I'm not mistaken, Satan's commander-in-general is that Tier 7 werewolf, right? The one whose ancestors fought the war against the vampires in Ixtal. Cervantes asked his son. Yes, father, although the other monarchies might get away with not participating in the war, I believe that for better or for worse the vampires won't enjoy that luxury. Satan has promised his general Ixtal in return for his loyalty and service, and there is absolutely no way Regis Aurelius lets them invade vampire lands, Amon replied as Cervantes smiled. Although Regis Aurelius was not a self-willing participant in the fight against the dark faction, it was comforting to know that he most likely would be forced to participate. The feud between the light and dark faction ran deep, all the way back to the Chaos era 5,000 years ago. However, the feud between vampires and werewolves was even deeper, which stemmed from their existence itself. Meanwhile Max was stunned when he saw the clone teleport beside himself suddenly as it startled him. Before Max could even blink, Zippo had already taken action and restrained the clone's hands into an arm lock as the Shadow Guard was at full guard. Only when it was confirmed that it was indeed the clone and not an imposter who posed danger did Zippo let the guy go, as the clone transferred the massive loot to Max and began explaining the quest and the corresponding situation. /////A/N. I'm sorry guys, but there will be only 2 chapters today. I won't count them in the bonus, and will resume the count from 13 tomorrow. ///// Chapter 413 Contradicting Mission. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After thinking carefully about the mission, Max absorbed the clone back into his body and the memories of all his experiences fused back with Max, giving him a splitting headache. Max saw everything vividly, the 4 abyssal magi sitting with their brains open, the crazy golden-eyed Arendelle and his murderous expression as he understood the clone's concern about taking this mission. While Max was struggling with his headache, Lucius, who had been going around looting the place with his party, came back to the area near the Mage Tower entrance and was surprised to see Raven sitting there on the street with his group surrounding him. I thought you were supposed to be looting. What are you doing here? Lucius asked as Max flicked his fingers and brought out a fraction of the gold that the clone had given him. Lucius's eyes widened in surprise looking at the hall as he refocused his eyes on Max, who had shut his eyelids tightly and was visibly struggling. Why does Captain Raven look in pain? Lucius asked in a genuinely concerned tone as Max patted Sebastian, who was standing beside him on the bum, to signal to him to cook an answer. One of Sebastian's many specialties was that he was good at acting, lying through his teeth, and cooking believable stories. Actually, my prince, we went into a nearby house to loot, but there was a trap inside. Although we got the loot, there was a spray of poison which went straight to Captain Raven's face. Thankfully he had the mask which protected his face from any damage, but his eyes were slightly damaged, which is why he is in pain. I'm sure as a man you understand how painful getting hit in the balls and eyes is, Sebastian said in a serious tone as Lucius finally understood what happened. Max, who had closed his eyes because his head hurt, could not help but chuckle at Sebastian's genius excuse. If you want, I can provide you with a healing potion, my lord, Lucius suggested after a while to be courteous, but Max rejected it as he got back up to his feet and said with his eyes still closed, no, we can continue. How were things on your side during this while? Lucius sighed as he brought out a ring and said, we explored an abandoned mage lab. At first it was nothing special, some formulas and research papers that might come useful. But then we found this ancient AI, one that calls itself the Codex, as it issued me a quest to save Zagoroth. To save him, we were given 5 rings that could protect us from the corrosive aura of death for 30 minutes by that AI. It is also the reason why I came back to find you, because instead of taking all my guards, I was wondering if I can request 2 of you guys to accompany me on this quest." Max was stunned silent listening to this request as he opened his eyes wide with shock. This was exactly opposite to the quest that Arendelle had issued for the clone. Max glanced towards Asiva, who was sweating profusely now as she shook her head again, telling Max no, warning him to think this through more seriously. When he looked at Anna, she gave him the look of, "You taking me?" When he looked at Severus, the middle-aged man was frowning as if nothing made sense, and in the end when he looked toward Sebastian he was hiding his face from Max, hoping he was not the one who Max picked to go with him. The point that Max noted was that Lucius claimed to have encountered an AI, the Codex itself, and not a living creature. This meant that most likely the information that the clone had obtained for Arendelle regarding the only people with a special status within the city who could not die were limited, and that the Codex, the divine artifact granting them life, was stretched to the limit. He had a nudging feeling that there was something wrong with Arendelle's story, that the psychotic bastard had ulterior motives. But he could not let the chance of getting to know a secret technique like the sealing method of gods go to waste. "Huh, what a coincidence, Prince Lucius, I was issued the same quest by the Codex, but it only gave me 1 ring. But if you are generous enough to lend me 2 more we can go with 6 people to save Zagoroth." "3 from your side and 3 from mine," Max said with a cheery voice as despite his splitting headache he put up a great act. Lucius sensed from the expressions of those around Max that something was fishy regarding this situation, but without proper intel, he could not figure out what. In the end he had no option but to toss 2 rings to Raven as he smiled and said, "Ready when you are." Max pretended to rub his eyes as he said, "I'll need a couple of hours, my prince. Why don't we explore some other houses till then and see if we can find more rings? If not, we shall proceed with the quest in 2 hours." Lucius nodded. There was no time limit in the quest in the first place, and going in with greater numbers was always an advantage, hence agreeing to Max's proposal the 2 parted ways once again. Max slipped 1 ring to the shadow below his feet while he put the other one over Sebastian's head. Sebastian's face turned dark when Max chose him to be his companion, but he obediently placed the ring in his inventory. The entire group understood that there was something convoluted between the triangle of entities, the Codex, Arendelle, and Zagoroth, and the only way to figure out what was by meeting Zagoroth in person. Only after meeting him would Max decide whether to kill him or save him. /////A/N. Chapter 1320, Back at It /////. Chapter 414, Lifting the Seal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Once Max's headache subsided a bit he was able to move and think more clearly. He had already gotten a lot of loot from just the clone's visit to the Mage Tower, and if he were to believe in the ring's power and rely on the clone's memory, he could raid floor 1.65 with 2 of his friends and get a lot more. He did not need to risk meeting Zagoroth, whose power level was unknown, or tangle with Arendelle, who was definitely at least tier 6. However, he was reluctant to give up on this chance to explore the truth behind the sealing method of the gods, as while he could rely on Angakok and his powers today, once he reached godhood and had to tangle with tier 7.8 entities, he could not always rely on Angakok for help. Also, he did not trust Angakok fully. The shaman god was by no means simple, which is why having an ultimate move like a sealing method which even tier 8 gods could not break would become a trump card in Max's arsenal in the future. Hence, despite fully understanding the risks and the absurdity of the situation, he decided to tag alongside Lucius and face Zagoroth. A while later, outside Zagoroth's residence, following the description that Arendelle and the Codex had given, the group quickly found Zagoroth's residence that was supposed to contain the entrance to the basement level of the city. Zagoroth's residence was a completely different building from the rest of the city, as the laws of gravity worked different inside the house. Some places, the gravity inverted, making what's up down and what was down up, but it was regular if one crossed that hall and entered another room. Countless artifacts and documents sprawled across the room, as one could see that the abyssal mage Zagoroth was serious not only about his own study project but also enthusiastic about studying what others submitted and created. The entrance to the basement levels of the city was through a cellar in Zagoroth's house, as before going down there were 3 maps plastered nearby which showed the difference between basement levels 1, 2, and 3. Basement 1 was the place where the common magi made their labs. It was isolated units 1-1 where the magi could only gain access from their own homes. Basement 2 was where some important figures were allotted labs for research. Their labs were about as big as 100 meters/100 meters area rooms, and access could be gained by special buildings such as public library, their private manors, and the store. Basement 3 was the most protected basement level with only 2 entry points and only 2 individuals given entry. Basement 3 was as wide as the entire city, and the 2 entry points to it were through Zagoroth's house and Arendale's house only. Gulping, Sebastian went down the staircase and ignored the diversions for basement 1 and 2 as he walked straight down to basement 3. The moment Sebastian entered the passageway that led to the open section of basement 3, he started feeling the corrosive aura of death as he quickly put on his ring to resist it. 30 minutes, Sebastian shouted to let everyone know that the countdown had started, and if they did not wish to see their HP bars shrivel and shrink, they needed to hurry. Max arrived beside Sebastian and put on the ring too, and hoped that Zippo would have done the same underneath, although he had no means to confirm if he really did. Lucius and his group of guards also put on the rings as the group cautiously proceeded towards the massive sealed gate that was glowing with runic inscriptions. It's a seal, the same kind used in the Fire Kingdom to imprison some sinister criminal who is too powerful to contain otherwise. It cuts off mana flow inside, preventing whoever is inside from conjuring mana-based attacks. It's simple to deactivate for me, just follow my instructions, Drax said in Max's head, as while the other members were scratching their heads over how to open the door, Max took the lead and quickly began interfering with the runic pattern as per Drax's instructions. Once again, Lucius was pleasantly surprised. The resourcefulness Raven had shown time and time again during this mission left a deep impression on him. In the future, when he became king, such a man could undoubtedly fill the position of his commander if he were willing. 1 minute later, Max deactivated the seal and cranked the heavy metal gate open as the rustic gate, which had not opened for thousands of years, finally opened with a creaking sound. Chwiik, ha ha ha, well done my lord, Lucius praised as he took a step inside the open gate only to be blasted aside by a strong moving force. Firewall, Max created a firewall, brightly illuminating the dark passageway they were in and completely blocking the advance of whoever was trying to push forward. We are here to save you, Zagoroth, we are not your enemies, Lucius said eventually as he stirred back to his feet. From within the door a voice which sounded deep and sinister smiled as it said, hiss, English. From all the species in the universe it was the bipedals who found me in the end. Max walked ahead of Lucius as he covered the prince behind his back, fearing that he might die before even reacting to the enemy's moves, as he stared into the darkness ahead and with his darkness vision looked straight into a pair of shining golden eyes, the same looking pair as Arendale's. Those eyes, that scent. Vampire. But what are those weaklings around you? I've never seen a species with fangs who smell like vampires but so faint, Zagoroth questioned as Max realized that the one vampire he referred to was him. It was the same for Arendale, they did not refer to him as primordial vampire. Because back in the day his species were the only vampires around, on the other hand to them the modern vampires were more of a mystery. /////A/N Chapter 14 20th// Chapter 4:15 Zippo the Enigma. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Slowly Zagoroth stepped out of the dimly lit room inside basement 3 and walked out into the corridor. He scanned the faces of the party who were there to save him and scoffed at their dressing sense and appearance. All of them seemed to be close-range warriors, yet none of them were wearing heavy armor. Every last one of them was wearing thin protective robes or light armor that was good for agility but terrible for defenses, as instantly Zagoroth's evaluation of the group dropped significantly. In his era, all close-range warriors wore heavy armor and managed to move pretty fast despite the heavy load, whereas light armor was preferred by mages, archers, and other long-ranged classes that did not need to engage in melee. On the other hand, Max also scanned and tested Zagoroth as he found that the once powerful entity had waned in power and was now only at tier 4, whereas his HP bar was at an extremely fragile position of 500 to 500. Years of surviving with the aura of death had waned the divinity of the god alongside his vitality, as he was now a shell of his true self. A single destructive move could potentially kill Zagoroth, but looking at his confident golden eyes, Max knew that he did not fear the group of 6 killing him at all. His facial features looked a bit like Arendelle from Max's memory, as if they were brothers or father and son. I want to know about the sealing method of the gods. Are you the one who created it? Max asked in an authoritative voice as Zagoroth smiled at his question. For thousands of years I've been aching for conversation with someone else. You cannot even imagine what such long periods of isolation do to one's psyche. I have a total of 31,000 different entities living inside my brain, each having their own personality. In my isolation they accompanied me, but despite us spending such long times together, none of them once raised their voices against me or ordered me to do something. Now, you boy 21.25 years of age wants to come and call the shots over me. Impudent. Zagoroth said as his powers exploded. Black smoke came out of his body and went towards Max, who tried to block it with flame wall. However, the wall was broken instantly by the fog, which kept traveling towards Max at consistent speed. Disperse. Max used disperse with his bare hands, as thankfully it worked and he was able to neutralize the spell by targeting its weakness perfectly. We are here to rescue you. You don't need to fight us, Lucius said, trying to make the situation clear that he was here to save the old man and not kill him. Save me. The moment I step outside basement 3, I re-enter the administrator's domain. Arendelle, my son, will kill me in an instant if I do so. If you really want to save me, kill the fucking administrator first and then destroy the codex. Zagoroth said as he attacked Max once again. Enough. Zippo, who usually never came out to fight unless absolutely necessary, came out this time to personally block Zagoroth's attack as he sucked it into a black vortex. Lucius was stunned to see Zippo pop out of Max's shadow. Till now he believed Max's shadow guard was a darkness elemental like the one they fought on the streets. However, it seemed that it was a living creature. Black dragon. Zagoroth exclaimed as Lucius's shock deepened. Raven's bodyguard is a black dragon. Is he connected to the Black Dragon clan? Or is he a rogue? Lucius wondered as for the umpteenth time he felt that Max was like a bottomless well of surprises. You will answer him about the sealing method of the gods, or I will beat it out of you, Zippo said as Max raised his eyebrow at his unusual behavior. Today Zippo had suddenly spoken more words than he usually did in an entire month, and the reason behind his actions were unknown. 7 minutes are up, Sebastian said softly, reminding the group that they were on a time limit. What sealing method of the gods? Lucius asked curiously, as the name of the method was grand and he heard both Raven and his bodyguard mention it to Zagoroth. You want my life's work just like that? Over my dead body, you bastards. Zagoroth said as he began controlling the darkness around them, preparing some grand move. It's rich of you kids to think that you can fight an abyssal mage within Abyss City. Here the darkness is our ally, which we turn into a bottomless abyss. Here. You don't stand a chance. Zagoroth said as he unleashed his attack. Abyss entrapment. An eerie darkness instantly covered the entire passageway as the area suddenly became a zero visibility zone. Inside the darkness some mysterious bindings began restricting all 6 of them, as in this situation only Max and Sebastian were able to have a read of their surroundings as they had perfected the first level of Way of the Wind. Sebastian. Take Lucius and go, Max shouted as he could absolutely not risk the life of the prince in such situations. Sebastian listened to Max's command as he struggled against the bindings, broke free and jumped over Lucius's back and activated the teleportation stone, teleporting out of the entire Abyss City and going straight back to the Jianmi City camp of the Bloodfall clan. Fireball, fireball, Max activated 2 fireballs on both his hands as he tried to illuminate the surroundings and drive the converging darkness away. During the short time frame where he produced some light, Max watched how Lucius's guards struggled against the darkness bindings covering them. However, they were unable to retaliate properly and were mummified under the bindings. Even Max's fireballs, which momentarily drove the darkness away, were snuffed away quickly as more and more darkness tried to restrict Max's movements. Max kept moving with all his energy, his way of the wind alerting him on where the next binding was coming from. However, he was fighting against too many small bindings at once and it was almost impossible for him to avoid them all, as slowly but surely he was beginning to be subdued. Just as Max was about to activate flame armor, and blast all darkness covering him temporarily away, he felt the move receding from his body as his senses felt like there was some vortex created 5 meters to his left which was sucking off all the darkness in the passageway. 20 seconds later, Zagorotha's move was completely neutralized and the light bioluminescent glow returned to the passageway, as Max looked at the Tier 5 Zippo calmly standing at the spot where the darkness had covered, black fog surrounding his body as he stared towards Zagoroth amusedly. Impossible. How do you have a better understanding of darkness than me? Although I have weakened over the years, I was once a Tier 6 god. I have mastered the law of light and darkness. I have spent 4,000 years being trapped in darkness. Yet you a mortal can dispel my attack. How? Zagoroth questioned Zippo, his golden eyes looking hazy and unfocused as Zippo smiled at his question and said, "You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it." /////A/N. Chapter 1520, almost done for the day /////. Chapter 416 Unfortunate opponent. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, Zippo said coldly as Max got chills all over his body. This was the first time he had seen Zippo take any initiative, and it seemed like the guard who only ever spoke a few words had a very good word game when he did speak. Black Dragon Clan were known to be mysterious and powerful, and while Max did not know about all the powers that his Aunt Rhea or Mira had, he was not aware about any high-level darkness abilities being in their arsenal. From Zippo's demeanor and mannerisms it seemed like he was truly born from darkness and had lived and breathed that element day in and day out. Thinking about this, Max once again got shivers down his spine. His bodyguard was a true Chad. I will give you the sealing method of the gods, if you accept my mission and kill Arendelle first. Only if you complete my quest first, shall I answer your question, Zagoroth said eventually after he understood that he could not outmuscle Zippo. Oh no. I'm done playing this game. You see, I don't care about either you or Arendelle, and both of you claim to be masters of the sealing method and want to kill each other. I'm getting all the information you have about that method, or I'm simply killing you here and now, simple as that. Max said with anger as he brazenly stared into Zagorotha's eyes unperturbed. Ha! Even if you kill me here, I'll only be resurrected by the Codex. Unlike your two friends who succumbed to my previous attack, I cannot die within this city, Zagoroth said as he confidently called out Max and questioned his ability to kill him. Oh, but you see, very unfortunately for you, the curse of death that has been put on your body has eroded your powers to Tier 4. And the thing is, I'm also Tier 4, Max said as a sinister smile unfurled on his face. Zagoroth seemed to be waiting for the kicker in Max's speech. Both of them were Tier 4, but so what? Illusion space. What Zagoroth did not know was that Max was in possession of a spatial-type move that could forcefully drag an opponent of the same tier to an illusionary world created by Max where he was the master of everything. Before Zagoroth could even react, he was teleported by Max's move into an endless white room with blood all over the floor up to one's ankle, as inside the space he could feel his connection with the Codex being cut off. Throwing his mask aside, Max let it drip into the blood underneath as he let Zagoroth see his true face. Blood manipulation. Max raised both his hands, as a massive tidal wave of blood rose behind his back, while countless chains of blood restricted Zagoroth's movement. Spatial move. Zagoroth assessed calmly as he did not struggle against the blood chains and calmly accepted his fate. The pitiful HP bar of yours, it won't last a second against me in this space. I'm a man of my word, and I'll not kill you here if you answer my questions truthfully. However, should you not, then I'll kill you here without a second's hesitation. The choice is yours, Max said threateningly as he awaited Zagoroth's answer. Meanwhile Lucius banged his hands against the desk as he glared toward Sebastian. This was the first time he had ventured out of his father's territory and tried to carry out such a ruins exploration. He was a Tier 3 warrior whose skills were on par with an early Tier 4 warrior. However, throughout the exploration he only found himself to be more and more useless. The pride he had in himself for being a member of the Aurelius clan and a genius in swordsmanship and combat was shattered within the Abyss City as he realized that without elite-level methods to track and detect opponents, all his swordsmanship play was useless. At first he could not detect the wind elemental, which greatly frustrated him. Then later he could not enter the mage tower because he had no means to resist the aura of death leaking from that place, and finally in the basement he had no moves in his arsenal that could counter the abyss attack the enemy launched. As if the little dwarf had not bailed him out of that situation, he would have become a sitting duck for the enemy's attack to take full effect. This situation greatly depressed the mighty prince, who used to think that the universe revolved around him. Dwarf. That detection technique that you share with Lord Raven, teach me that move, regardless of the price you want in exchange. Just ask for it, but please teach me the move, Lucius said in a half-authoritative and half-pleading tone as his frustrations leaked out of his body during this plea. Sebastian, who had no intentions of leaking Master Kremitha's teachings, shook his head as he said, to learn that technique you need to embrace the way of the coward first. Only by understanding the path of cowardice and becoming a true coward can I impart that secret technique upon you. I need to become a coward. Are you suggesting that Lucius Aurelius becomes a coward? Lucius said in an annoyed tone as he gave Sebastian a warning and an opportunity to retract his statement, but contrary to his expectations Sebastian stuck by it. Indeed, may the cowardice be with you. Amen. Sebastian joined his hands and prayed earnestly for Lucius to become cowardly in the future. The third prince's left eye fluttered at this response as he could not figure out if the dwarf was trolling him or being serious, but in the end he let the matter be as he stormed outside the office he was in, fearing that if he stayed longer he might lose control and kill the annoying dwarf. //////n. Chapter 1620, done for the day /////. Chapter 417 Tragic Past. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What is your choice? Life or death? Max asked Zagoroth, who seemed to study Max's red eyes curiously. I've met your kind on the battlefield before, a truly ferocious race. However, I've never seen one with such an exaggerated ability to control blood. You are stronger than your brethren, Zagoroth said as he sighed deeply and began conceding to Max's demands. The sealing method of the gods is in essence the same technique as sealing an area without mana. The main difference between gods and mortals is that their bodies are stronger than that of mortals and can use a more conservative form of energy found in the universe called divine energy. An attack laced with divine energy is several-fold more destructive than their normal mana counterparts, whereas pure divine energy attacks are what give gods the power to destroy entire planets if they so wish to. Usually divine energy is not easy to produce and replenish naturally. The most effective method of possessing it is either looting from the corpses of other gods or developing godly colonies on planets which have not yet integrated with mana and make those colonies worship an entity. This is a big reason behind why the AI the Queen controls the universe now, as she strictly monitors the ascension of all gods to Tier 6 and allocates them some unawakened planets to establish their colonies on. While mana-based barriers can cut off a god's supply of environmental mana, it cannot prevent them from using divine energy attacks, which is why after Tier 6 it becomes increasingly difficult to seal an existence. During the Grand War, there were often times that gods fought and defeated other gods, but having no proper method to restrain them or imprison them, the only option they had was to kill them. Back then I was an abyss mage who had researched alongside my brother Arendelle and my master Optimal the Tier 8 sealing move, the Black Prison. It was a move that nobody was able to escape, and it brought me a lot of fame as a mage even though I was only an apprentice at the time to my master. In our arrogance we believed Black Prison was impenetrable, however, while the attack was impregnable to break out of, it was still possible to break into. Even a Tier 3 warrior could break the Black Prison spell from the outside if they attacked hard enough, and that was a big issue. To solve this problem, I was hired by Odin to create a sealing method that was even better than Black Prison, and that's how my obsession with it started. For years I began researching ways to seal gods until one day I found a paradox which when inscribed created a barrier which repelled everything perfectly. I created a wall that was impossible to break even by Odin himself, and the only thing I was left to achieve was to transform that wall and inscription into a spell to seal someone. It sounded simple enough, but in theory it was impossible to do. It was only because of the inscriptions and the special set up that it could achieve the paradox needed to repel everything, and no matter how I drew the spell pattern, I could not recreate the same effects. I needed more funding for my project, but unfortunately at this stage of my research Odin suffered a terrible loss at the hands of the coward turtle Kremeth and had to cut my research off. My snake of a brother Arendelle offered me a hand during this tumultuous time as he promised to provide me shelter in Abyss City and highest grade research privileges. Since he was an administrator of this city, he had a lot of sway, and I believed that since we are brothers he would not wrong me. Initially I even let him and his disciples join me in my research. He even began calling me master instead of brother, and I mentored him wholeheartedly and encouraged his ideas and progress in my project. But I soon understood that my brother's intention to invite me to Abyss City was anything but noble, as he was only being good to me so that he could steal my project from me and take all credit. Once he understood all the basics of my project from me, he began using that as a foundation and launched his own research project. When I learnt that my brother intended to steal my work which I had spent centuries working on, I hastily created a dangerous prototype which was unstable and decided to stupidly use it on Hades to make my mark on the universe and take all credit for my research's success. Naturally the seal crumbled and Hades cursed me with the aura of death which turned my life into living hell. I barely reached Abyss City before I died, but since I was connected to the Codex I was reborn again. But my corrosive soul put a lot of strain on the Codex, and my brother had to choose between letting me die and letting other people in the city stay connected to the Codex. At the time I thought it was out of filial pity that he decided to save me, as we mended our ways and restarted research on the sealing method of the gods together, hoping to someday sell it to Hades and ask him to remove the curse of death from my body as repayment. For 300 more years we researched and perfected the method, until one day my brother revealed his true colors once more and tried to terminate my connection with the Codex. Apparently he had realized that he could not complete the project on his own and needed my help, which was the only reason why he decided to save me, as it was selfish motives that drove this decision of his and no filial pity whatsoever. Unfortunately for him, after his first betrayal I had become cautious and secretly modified the Codex so that my life and death were not in the hands of the administrator. My brother failed to kill me, and a massive fight broke out between us, where I severely damaged his 4 disciples and gouged 3/4 of his liver out. On the other hand he managed to seal me within the 3rd basement level, and we had a stalemate ever since. After that I'm not sure what happened, but my brother must have tried to leave the city to sell our creation. But he would have been unable to do so since I had modified the Codex such that the moment anyone connected to it walked out of the special zone they would instantly lose soul force and turn to ash. As long as I live, my brother cannot remodify the Codex and escape the city. Although he imprisoned me, I imprisoned him within this empty city too and spent years specifically underneath the Mage Tower, concealing my corrosive aura and redirecting it towards the tower to make sure that my brother's life became a living hell, Zagoroth said as he explained to Max his entire life story, which was slightly sad to hear. LO/////A/N. Chapter 17/20, The Last Day starts /////. Chapter 418 Calculative Max. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Max intently listened to Zagoroth's story and even felt some pity for him at times. He had been wronged by Arendelle to some extent according to his story account, but Max was not dumb enough to believe that every word coming out of that person's mouth was truth. He took the entire story with a grain of salt and prevented himself from feeling any extreme emotions towards the tale. "My condolences for your suffering," Max said in the most serious tone that he could muster, "but you did perfect the sealing method of the gods in the end, yes?" Max asked with hope. "Indeed, I did master it. The only drawback is that the spell requires divine energy to be conjured, so in the end to fight a god one must become a god," Zagoroth said with a disappointed sigh as he looked at his own frail arms and feet. Once being a tier 6 powerhouse, Zagoroth could use his own creation, however, he could no longer do it in his current state. "I'll give the method to you, not because I'm afraid of death, or because you managed to intimidate me out of it. No. I'm giving you the method because I feel that your future will be watched by many, and with you my creation will find its greatest recognition," Zagoroth said as he produced a large sheet of paper from his inventory. Spell. Divine Concealment, Divine. Restrictions. Max looked at the spell sheet and tossed it into his own inventory without trying to open it and learn it. "Thank you, I'll make sure that the outside world knows who the creator of this spell is," Max said politely before he let the massive tidal wave of blood that he was holding over his head crash into Zagoroth. Zagoroth seemed to have long expected this as he did not struggle at all. Spreading his two hands he peacefully closed his eyes and accepted his fate. 4500 The damage from the attack was not enough to kill a tier 4 warrior under regular circumstances, however, being corroded with the aura of death for thousands of years. Zagoroth's HP bar had been reduced to only a few hundred points as he died from this feeble attack. The reason why Max killed him was cold and calculated. Max did not want the creator of this terrifying ability to share it with others, as he wanted it to be an ace which was exclusive to him and him only. To ensure that it was the case, he decided to mercilessly kill Zagoroth. System notification. You have killed the tier 4 warrior, Zagoroth, you have freed him from the curse of death. Plus 100,000 EXP. System notification. Plus level up. Once Max returned to the real world, Zippo stared at him with a frown. Zippo was ready to beat the shit out of Zagoroth to get the spell, however, he was taken by surprise as Max took him away into some different dimension in a spatial move that Zippo had never seen Max use before. You got the spell? Zippo asked Max seriously. I did, Max replied curtly as he looked at Zippo and waited for him to show his hand. Matriarch Rhea has commanded me to get my hands on that spell. We can negotiate the terms of you surrendering it to me, Zippo said after thinking seriously for a while as Max began to chuckle. It seemed like even when Zippo was on a mission with Max he had some secret means to communicate and stay in touch with the Black Dragon clan, and his overenthusiastic approach to the fight this time was because he was under orders from Rhea to secure the spell. Express my condolences to Aunt Rhea, but this spell is not for sale, Max said without even considering what the Dragon clan had to offer him in exchange for this move. Max wanted absolutely nothing, as no price could ever move him to give up this ability. Zippo's face looked like it was drained of color at Max's reply as he merged back with Max's shadow, hoping to talk to the Black Dragon clan about the situation first before responding. Walking out of Basement 3, Max began calculating his next move as he decided that while avoiding the Mage Tower, he would quickly loot this place dry and then start damaging the pillars of the city to ensure that he would be able to collapse it into rubble on his way out. Meanwhile, Mira, your elder brother Max has refused to operate with the Black Dragon clan on a critical interest of ours. How do you suggest we handle this situation? Rhea asked Mira with a stern voice as she was angered with Max's decision to not share such an important skill scroll with the Black Dragon clan. Firstly, he's not my brother. Secondly, the only reason why you even know he is in possession of a special spell is because you have planted a spy by his side. Zippo is a Shadowborn mother. If Max can obtain something for himself while him being by his side, then you need to reassess his strength, Mira retorted, fully taking Max's side in this issue. Rhea raised an eyebrow. Her daughter had started to grow more and more unruly by the day, as it was becoming obvious by her behavior that she cared more about Max than she did about the Black Dragon clan as a whole. He does not have the ability to wield that spell, it's a waste for it to be on him, and it's not like we are exploiting him, we offer a fair price in return, Rhea said, taking the moral high ground in the situation. Spin it any way you like, mother, in your heart you know you are exploiting him. In my personal opinion, he's not someone the Black Dragon clan should provoke, he might not be much compared to you today, but in 10 years' time he will make his mark on the universe. At that time, the Black Dragon clan can be his allies or his enemies, the choice is yours, Mira said with a shrug of her shoulders as she walked out of the room, much to the annoyance of her mother Rhea. Although Rhea was considered moderate in terms of temperament amongst the Dragon clan, she was not exactly a non-violent and peaceful individual. Her wrath was legendary and today's situation had left her fuming. Unfortunately, her love for her daughter was greater than her anger on her and the boy, which was the only reason she decided to put the matter aside for now. Thinking that if she was ever in critical need of that spell, she knew exactly where to find it. //////A/N Chapter 1820, Enjoy. // Chapter 419, The End of the Exploration. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Drax calmly observed Max's mental state and attitude and felt satisfied seeing him progress. Today Drax finally felt as if he was truly serving a lord and had not merged with some imbecile kid. When he had just merged with Max a few years ago and had taken a glance at his memories, he saw a weak man who did not have the guts to achieve his dreams. Back then, he had to force Max to kill his abusive ex-girlfriend because it was necessary to temper his mentality. At the time he could remember the trembling teenager who was reluctant to take a human life, which was in stark contrast to the man he was today, who emotionlessly killed Zagoroth just because he might someday leak the secret of the sealing method to someone else. It was a gradual change in his temperament which had been kickstarted ever since he merged with Drax and killed Sophie, however the speed was exaggerated once he became a primordial vampire. When his body's hormones started to respond differently to killing an individual and no longer triggered guilt in his heart, little by little the human inside Max died and the cold primordial vampire who aimed to become a monarch someday was born. Today, he had reached a maturity level that allowed Drax to bow his head in front of him, and truly start accepting him as a master. Meanwhile Max met back up with Anna, Asiva and the group and explained the reason behind Sebastian and Lucius's absence. He gave the command to recall all soldiers and to have them move as two big units as he feared what Arendelle might do now that Zagoroth was dead. Although that psychotic bastard could not leave the Abyss City, he could still leave the Mage Tower and move freely in the city otherwise, which made him a big threat to the security of the explorers inside. Despite the risk, Max did not want to stop looting the place, especially since they still had 3 days left before the coronation ceremony and the time in between could be used to gather precious loot. Reorganizing the looting party from groups of 5 to group of 40 men in a party, Max slowed down the speed of exploring and looting in preference of safety. He gave orders to avoid the wind elemental and immediately give a distress signal if they encountered a crazy bastard with golden eyes. In the meantime, he alongside Anna went towards one of the giant pillars supporting the underground city and began cracking it like a stone worker with his sword as a nail and a giant piece of rock for a hammer. Max took 12 hours to damage one pillar to the point where it could be destroyed by Anna by a single arrow while exiting, while he also repeated the process 4 more times over the next 2 days against strategic pillar locations. As expected, the wind elemental and the psychotic Arendelle did pop up from time to time, but the large number of troops were always able to retreat from danger without risking a dangerous confrontation. Although the group could potentially loot a lot more in the area if they wanted to, Max did not think it was wise to come back and re-explore the city, as on his way back he stood beside Anna and watched her destroy all 5 pillars one after another, collapsing the roof over Abyss City and starting a massive earthquake on Gianni planet. Only when they exited the mines safely despite the earthquake did Max breathe a sigh of relief, as although the mines looked like they might collapse from the earthquake that was just created, it held strong till the end. Max was sure that Arendelle did understand perfectly well that Max was damaging the foundations of the city, and if he wanted to, he could have interfered in the matter, but somehow he tacitly avoided meeting Max wherever he went. Perhaps it was fear that if he could kill Zagoroth he could also kill Arendelle, or perhaps it was some other hidden motive, but either way as far as Max was concerned he was buried under a lot of rocks and the legend of the Abyss City had finally been completely erased from the history of the universe. Meanwhile Lucius, after the expedition, Lucius and Max quickly cooperated on loot distribution and Max decided to keep the sealing method, which he did not disclose on the list of loot and stated as an unknown spell, and the Truth Orb as his two privileged first picks. Lucius chose some precious gems which were hard to find in modern times as his pick, while the rest of the gold, artifacts and research papers were distributed in a 60.40 split as promised by the system contract. The approximate value of the total loot was about 60 billion gold coins, of which Max got 36 billion worth of items and Lucius took 24 billion worth of items. Of the 36 billion, only 18 billion were in liquid assets, whereas the other 18 came from various potion distilling methods and lost potion recipes that were worth a lot of money and could generate serious passive income for the Bloodfall clan in the years to come. Overall, the exploration could be considered extremely successful, and despite Lucius not contributing much to it, he did receive healthy benefits in the end. For Max, the expedition provided him with some much-needed immediate economic relief to run his territory as well as a method to obtain a recurring source of income in the days to come. It also provided him with an invaluable technique that could become his trump card once he ascended to Tier 6, but his biggest win from this expedition was winning Lucius Aurelius's friendship. The kid who did not understand the true nature of the relationship between his father and Max was in awe of Max's prowess and determined to bend over backwards if needed to secure his friendship. Such an attitude made him a usable pawn in Max's hands. /////A/N Chapter 19/20 The event is approaching its end. ///// Chapter 420 The night before the coronation ceremony. You are listening at novelfull.audio. One day before Max's coronation ceremony, a lot of officials from the Aurelius clan landed in Dombivli City. The crown to be put on Max's head, prepared by some of the finest goldsmiths in the vampire monarchy, was escorted in a glass container and paraded slowly through the streets of Dombivli by 4 royal guards of the Aurelius clan. At the front of the escort service walked a drummer who beat a rhythmical marching beat, and behind him walked the prime minister of the Aurelius clan holding the Aurelius clan banner high. Following him, as the prime minister of the Bloodfall clan, Asiva walked holding the Bloodfall clan banner at a height only slightly below the Aurelius clan banner with proud steps. The Bloodfall clan banner was different from most vampire clan banners in the sense it did not follow the general color theme of red, black and golden that was popular amongst the other vampire clans. The Bloodfall clan banner was white in the background and had a picture of the Titan Atlas holding the sky on his back as the main logo, painted fully in black, while he cried tears of blood in red which accumulated in a massive pool under his feet, which completed the symbolism in the flag. The design was selected by Max personally and it hid a deep message inside. To an outsider it may look like an image of a giant holding a big rock, but only Max knew that it was Atlas, the Titan who was punished by Zeus to hold the weight of the sky for eternity. In a way, that Titan was whoever was the patriarch of the clan, and their job was to keep the sky from falling even if they cried tears of blood in the process. The flag symbolized every aspect of Bloodfall, both literally and figuratively, and promoted the concept of self-sacrifice for the greater good of the clan. The entire town had come to watch this parade as there was an air of excitement and awe at the change of power that the city was undergoing. So far, the reforms Max had announced were extremely popular amongst the general populace, as his city reconstruction and cleaning efforts touched the hearts of many. The citizens were hopeful of a bright future under their new ambitious young lord, and it was visible in their act of throwing flowers and scented perfume at the feet of the parading men that they welcomed the regime change with open arms. The Prime Minister noticed these public sentiments expressionlessly, as he more or less understood that despite it being only a few weeks since the fall of the Kingsman clan, the new lord had been successful in consolidating power and quelling rebellion. Eventually, the parade reached the inner district, and there a red carpet had been rolled out for the Prime Minister of Aurelius clan to walk all the way into the palace gates. In the inner district, the Bloodfall clan soldiers held their weapons over their chest as they gave a grand salute to the crown which was being carried towards the palace. Eventually, when the parade reached the palace gate, Lucius received the prime minister and helped him carry the crown to his prepared room where it was to be stored overnight. At this point it remained ambiguous as to if Regus or Aurelius would personally grace the coronation ceremony or not, but as per norms his room was also prepared if he did arrive tonight. Once the prime minister settled, the other guests started to arrive a few hours later with many big names like the Vega Titus, Julian Caesar, Sam St. Maximus, John Velter and Denver Savitzer coming personally. Out of the 36 vampire clans, 12 patriarchs attended the event personally while 24 sent high-ranking officials to the event, but all 36 clans sent someone with gifts as per tradition. Apart from the clan leaders, some notable figures from outside the vampire world were also present in the form of Guildmaster Neatwit and the chairman of the Seven Galaxy Bank. What was especially shocking was that the patriarchs of clans ranked number 1, 3, 4 came personally to attend the Bloodfall clan lord's coronation ceremony when his preliminary standing was placed at 32, which was pretty much at the bottom of the vampire society. Naturally, this lineup caused shockwaves to spread throughout vampire society. While it was natural for Vega Titus to attend since he was a known ally of Raven Bloodfall, however, for Julian Caesar, John Velter and Denver Savitzer to personally attend the ceremony was shocking. Currently the Velter clan was ranked second in the clan rankings and John Velter was the son of the patriarch Leroy Velter. The Velter clan were an economic powerhouse and a mostly neutral clan that maintained stable relationship with everyone. If not for their thorough lack of ambition and unwillingness to become Regus's puppet, they could easily be ranked first. Although Leroy did not come personally, for him to send John was also akin to attending the event personally. The Savitzer clan on the other hand was ranked fourth, and their patriarch Denver was attending the event personally, but the reason behind it was actually because of Lucius. The Savitzer clan had decided to support Lucius in the race to become crown prince, and it was on Lucius's personal plea that Denver decided to attend the event personally and forge a bond with Raven to rope him towards Lucius's faction. The lower-ranking lords who did not attend the event personally regretted their choice to not come personally after listening to this line. Up. Because if they did come, they would have had a chance to socialize with the Big Four at the gala dinner the night before the coronation ceremony. Meanwhile Hazriel looked at Dombivli City through her omniscient eyes and told her Nemesis to lock onto the planet's coordinates as she was planning to jump towards her destination. 12 hours later, it was Max's coronation and she intended to attend the event and meet with Max once again after saving him all those years ago. /////A/N. Chapter 2020. This bonus chapter is sponsored by patron Cervantes91, so please thank him in the comments for this one. With this I complete all past promises /////.